get desperate refugees tired from crossing seas and borders to be an economic asset to the countries like Germany that give them safe haven? That's the question we're analysing on Real Economy this week. 1.2 million asylum applications were made in Europe last year. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But let's put it into context. This summer, just over 300,000 applications were made. But that's only around 600 applications for every million Europeans. Differing asylum rules makes it really hard for us to distinguish between economic migrants and refugees, therefore their economic impact. So here's a crash course.
When asylum seekers first arrive, the host country pays to process applicants, as well as for food, housing, health and education. In the short term, the extra spending increases the country's aggregate demand or fiscal expansion. That means more goods and services are produced, which results in more disposable income for native workers. That makes up for downward pressures on wages and inflation, where the asylum seekers finally enter the job market, which can take up to 2 years, depending on different rules of countries. When they can start looking for a job, newcomers tend to fall behind native workers. To narrow the gap, it's key to increase employability quickly. That means housing them closer to work, flexible labour markets, providing language skills and education. Successful economic integration can help fiscal sustainability for the host country while potentially addressing demographic challenges.
60% of asylum seekers this summer came from war-torn Syria, Afghanistan and Iraq, with many of them staying or travelling through Greece, Hungary, Italy, France and 6 out of 10 heading to Germany, where the open door policy has both its supporters and detractors. So Gianni Maggi headed out to find out if the country is prepared to make this a long-term investment.
The big challenge for German companies like technology giant SAP is bringing refugees into their jobs market. People such as Nasser from Afghanistan and Mohammed from Syria, who now call Germany home. First steps include internships that retrain them for their new environment.
The first difficult thing is German language, that they has to do these courses until they are in a level to be accepted in a labor market. And also the culture is different. I mean, everything is different.
I did marketing in my country for a ceramic factory, and I thought we are doing some modern business, but I mean it's light years away from what we did over there. There's a lot to learn.
SAP's recruitment head says upskilling is not an issue.
For us, the challenge is in the recruiting sector to find the right talents, no matter where they are coming from, no matter whether they are migrants, or we are going to a certain country to look for the right talent.
Germany needs that talent to fill 1 million jobs. 685,000 need skills. Refugees like Hussein from Syria fit the bill. He arrived in Berlin with a tech degree and started up migrant hire.
At the beginning, we were working like LinkedIn. Then we matched the candidates that we have on our database with the vacancies. Now we are working like a job board. We contact the companies who has vacancies, and the candidates can see the vacancies and they can apply directly.
Out of more than 1 million refugees who arrived in Germany in 1 year, 21,400 have found jobs, but only around 100 were hired by the 3 largest companies, a small part that does not affect the workforce aspect, destined to shrink by several million units in the next few years. Refugee arrivals this year will generate costs of about 10 billion euros, rising to 20 billion in 2020. To pay for it, the government has earmarked 6 billion euros a year for the next 2 years. That's half of the 2015 budget surplus. As the costs mount, companies are calling for a more efficient refugee policy.
Wir müssen jetzt auch es schaffen,
we also need to succeed amongst the variety of programs and initiatives to determine the most successful ones, then also to roll out, to unfold and to broaden them.
That's key to the economic integration of refugees who tend to be of working age into one of the fastest ageing populations in the world.
Well, the German example raises a heck of a lot of questions about the long term, which Ian Golden can answer because he is a world-renowned expert on migration, the author of a new book called The Age of Discovery, and the founding director of the Oxford Martin School here at Oxford University. Ian, when we talk about the German example and refugees, fiscal costs always come up. How do the Germans make sure that this is a long-term investment rather than sunk cost?
It's both a short-term and a long-term investment. In the short term, it provides stimulus to the German economy, which will grow about 0.2% faster than it would have without the refugees. And of course, in the longer term, they will also deal with one of the lowest fertility rates in the world in Germany, and that will be vital for the long-term sustainability of the German economy.
Well, you always hear that there's a lack of empirical evidence that that is possible.
Google would not exist without Sergey Brin, a refugee. Steve Jobs was the son of a Syrian refugee. If you give people the ability to work, give them the education they need for the skills, the transferring, the recognizing of their previous degrees, the adaptation to your own systems, ensuring that they have the ability to integrate into labor markets, know about jobs, can get to the places, can get housing. That's vital. So we have lower dependence ratios amongst refugees than for the population as a whole. And those countries that integrate them effectively do really well. And those where refugees are not allowed to work and they are unemployed is where you have the troubles.
Economically, what can we do to make sure that native workers don't feel that their jobs are threatened, their economies are threatened?
Yes, and we see that in the politics, this rejection because of feeling of a threat. Germany's had a labour shortage and very low levels of unemployment. So if you have high unemployment, one has to worry much more about this. But what Sweden's been doing has been quite remarkable in relationship to its population size. And I think knowing that people are going to take jobs that locals won't do. Interestingly enough, even in Eastern Europe, there's a massive labour shortage in certain skills.
What can refugees do then to alleviate the worries of people who are going to host them?
Their ability to learn the local languages, to ensure that their skills are applicable, to respect the customs and laws of the country they've arrived in is absolutely vital. Many of them work in occupations where they're overqualified to do the jobs. But I think accepting that it takes time, accepting that it's difficult for the host societies, that there's an adjustment process for both sides in this, and that over a period of 4 or 5 years one will see the real breakthroughs if the host society is prepared to make the necessary efforts and the refugees are.
And on that note, thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.